What is up, Wizards? It's me, Mooner. I'm back. I got a deck tech for you today. So I wanted to do an updated deck tech from my Blaze Firemind. From the first one I did that was about a month ago, that was just like my first draft, and those were just my initial thoughts on the deck. And after playing many games, this is what I have evolved into. It's not profoundly different, but there are some key differences in this deck than my previous one that I think you guys should be aware of. So with that, let's just get right into it. Also, if you like this kind of content, I just do straight up flesh and blood, all wizard content all the time. Give me a like, a follow, a subscribe, any of that. All that shit helps. I'm really trying to get to 500 subscribers so I can give away some sweet stuff. If you've been a long time fan of the channel, you know I've given away some sweet stuff before. So as soon as we hit 500, that's going to happen again. Anyways, let's get into the deck tech. So we have Blitz. Obviously, we know she's really difficult to get a hold of right now. And for those of you who can't get a hold of her and don't know what she does, her hero power reads, whenever you opt, you may put energy counters on Blaze equal to the number of cards opted or looked at in this way. So if you opt 4 or opt 3, you put 3 energy counters on Blaze. And then once per turn instant, so this is very important because you can do this on your turn or your opponent's turn. Remove X energy counters from Blaze and then banish a wizard card, a wizard non-action card from your hand with it's hard to read, but with an effect that deals arcane damage equal to X. So just for instance, if you have 3 energy counters on Blaze, you can banish a wizard card like Sonic Boom, banish it from your hand, and then play it. You still have to pay the cost, but you can do this once per turn, either on your turn or your opponent's turn. A very strong ability, and so I've built my deck to really kind of take advantage of opting as much as possible, and we'll get into that. I know Blaze is really hard to find right now, but that should become easier in the future. All you wizards who don't have your copy and want one should be able to find one. Just a heads up, I know Josh Lau from the Card Guys has a few for sale that he got from the UK. I unfortunately had to buy mine from the UK, and it wasn't cheap, but you can't stop me from playing Wizard. So that's Blaze right there, and then let's just go over the equipment suite real quick. Our main staff and only staff is Waning Moon. Unfortunately, Crucible of Aether Weave has been banned with the ascension of Kano to LL. So there are a few other staffs, but Waning Moon is above and beyond the best staff that we can be using, especially because we are playing on our opponent's turn so much. Just being able to deal that extra 3 damage is massive. The only cloak I'm wearing is Spellfire Cloak. These games typically do not go past turn 2 or 3, so I've found that like Tunic is just kind of useless, and sometimes you need that resource as early as turn 1 or 2, so Spellfire Cloak it is. Anyone familiar with the Wizard class should know how powerful Spellfire Cloak is. Next we have Talismanic Lens. This is my main headpiece. This comes into just about every matchup except for maybe Ninja and quite possibly Mechanologist, who tend to be the more difficult matchups, but then again, that's only if they're running AB. But this comes into every matchup pretty much. Just being able to at instant speed destroy it and opt 2 and get those 2 counters on the Blaze is really crucial. But then I am also running Balance of Justice. This does come in for the Brute matchups, and it comes in for the Ninja matchup specifically. They do be drawing massive amounts of cards, and blocking some of those breakpoints can be rather difficult. So just Balance of Justice and then being able to draw a card when they draw 2 cards, or like play their Blood Rush Bellows or their Art of Wars, or just Katsu just does drawing many cards. So does Brute. So I bring this in for those matchups. It's also really good into Benji, who has a lot of unpreventable damage, and just being able to throw this in front of a Spring Tidings is really important because we don't have a lot of our armor otherwise doesn't block for anything. None of it does. The only arms piece I am running is Metacarpus Node. Just being able to buff the kill spells up by 1 or 2 or 3 even is really important. Just to be able to get over like Arcane Barrier and things like that. Metacarpus Node is just an all-star, especially in this deck. And then the last piece of equipment we're running should be a surprise to no one, and that is Stormstriders. I don't think you can realistically play the Wizard class without Stormstriders. Anyways, this is all my equipment. Once again, Stormstriders, Metacarpus Node, Balance of Justice, Talismanic Lens, which is my main headpiece, Spellfire Cloak, Waning Moon, and then we have the beautiful, gorgeous Blaze herself. So now I'm going to just go through my blues, my reds, my yellows, and my sideboard, and just kind of talk about briefly why all of these cards are in my deck. If you agree or don't agree, I've had a lot of success with this deck. I've been able to 4-0 all my armories, and I've got a pretty good Talishar score after roughly about 150 games. So I think this deck is really solid. It works out pretty well. So let's just get into the blues. I've got one copy of Rewind in the main board. This comes in basically because there's quite a few things you can rewind. Like you can rewind a Blood Rush Bellows, you can rewind a Channel Mount Heroic. There's a lot of things that Enigma might throw out that you can rewind that you just can't pay for. So Rewind has proven itself to be just good enough to be a one of in the deck, but it is still a blue. I know it blocks for 0, but it has proven itself to be valuable enough to just run one copy of. And then I know when I first started this deck, I thought that Blaze wasn't really an energy counter deck, but we are only running 18 blues in the main board, and Energy Potion coming in at 2 slots. This is like when you're sideboarding, this is one of the first cards that you might want to cut, especially Rewind and Energy Potion. But these are in here just to like add a little bit more to the blue count and be able to smooth out some of those hands. It is possible to draw some clunky hands in this deck where you might have lethal but you're a resource or 2 short. So Energy Potion is actually pretty important in playing Blaze. So we have 2 copies of Energy Potion. And we have 1 copy of Cindering Foresight. I don't have a second blue in the deck. I think 1 is enough. Running 6 Cindering Foresights can just be pretty clunky. And even 5 can be pretty clunky. But being able to draw these on your opponent's turn, opt to get those counters on Blaze, and then play a spell that's buffed up by 2 or 3, depending on the Cinderings that you have in hand, is really important. And that's when Energy Potion can come into play as well. So for the rest of the spells, we have 2 copies of Emeritus Scolding. I do play mostly on my opponent's turn, so and to remove counters from Blaze, you only need to remove the base amount of counters, the base amount of arcane damage. So even on your opponent's turn that this deals 4 damage, you still only need to remove 2 counters. Just a heads up on that. So we have 2 copies of Emeritus Scalding. We have 2 copies of Aether Arc. This is just a solid spell. Remove 1 counter, deal damage. It works really well with Aether Wildfire and buffing up that spell. It just works really well as a one-of on your own turn, just forcing some interaction or getting an arsenal card. Potentially, there are a lot of cards in this deck you don't want to arsenal, but there are a lot of cards that you do want to arsenal. So now we go on to, those are all the blue spells. The rest is all utility, kind of like Energy Potion here. So we have 2 copies of Absorbent Aether. These come in and stay in for every single match. Even the Wizard Mirror, just because it is a blue, and a lot of Blazes are now more focused on a hybrid list, so you're never too sad to arsenal an Absorbent Aether if they are on the hybrid list, but otherwise it's still blue block 2 that pitches for blue, obviously. So even if they're on the straight arcane list, it is still a blue. It's a rather useless one, but it is still, arcane prevention. And then we're running 2 copies of Whisper of the Oracles. This is, in my opinion, one of the most goated spells, or it's not a spell, one of the most goated cards in the deck, just because it has Go Again. And being able to opt to put some counters on Blaze and then maybe shoot a spell or something like that. Having Go Again stapled on it is really important. So we're going to put that there in the utility cards. Then we have 2 copies of Gaze the Ages. Being able to opt to is, you're rarely going to, unless you use Blaze's hero ability first and then play Gaze the Ages, and then it comes back to hand. And it does have some really great synergy with Kindle and things like that. But just opting, as you'll see, this deck is heavily focused around opting. So we have 2 copies of Gaze the Ages in the sideboard. Most of the time, it's just going to be an opt 2. But like I said, if you use her hero ability on your turn, and then play something at instant speed, and then you Gaze the Ages to get those counters back, and then Gaze comes back to your hand, and you can just use it to shoot Waning Moon or something like that. Then we have 1 copy of Eye of Ophidia. Obviously, when you pitch this card, it opts to. It's pretty busted in Blaze. Just being able to pitch it on yours or your opponent's turn, pitch it to Breakstorm Striders, opt to. It really works well with Kindle and things like that. Then I'm one of those weird ones who likes to run Clarity Potion. I think I was one of the first ones on it. This is really important. I know it is another non-block in the deck, but like I said, this deck is designed to play more on your opponent's turn than it is on your turn. And in those ninja matchups where you have to give up your hat, and in those brute matchups and things where you have to give up your hat, this just acts like another hat. So you can play it down a Clarity Potion and then instant speed destroy it and opt to. So I really like 2 copies of Clarity Potion. This deck doesn't like to block a whole lot. It more likes to play a little bit of a setup game where it tries to put as many counters on Blaze as possible as soon as possible, and then Arsenal of Wildfire and wait to draw an Emeritus or something, or a Sonic Boom. And then speaking of that, those are all the blues that are in the main deck. And then we are going to go over the yellows. So we have 2 copies of Sonic Boom. This is an amazing card that should be played in just about any wizard that can play it logistically. Just deal 3 arcane damage, and then if it deals damage, look at the top card of your deck. If it's a wizard non-attack action card, you may banish it. If you do, may blah 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 blah. We all know how Sonic Boom works. But this is a really good target to play after Aether Wildfire, or just play off of Blaze's hero ability if you can buff it up with some things like Cindering Foreskin. Get down. So, Kano. Sorry, my cat is a crazy little motherfucker. Crazy little crackhead. He has to be the center of attention at all times. But we have Cindering Foresight. I like to call it Cindering Foreskin. But yeah, so I'm running 1 blue, I'm running 2 yellows, and then when we get to the reds, we'll talk about that. But just being able to opt and then also buff your next spell up is really important. You can play this on your opponent's turn at instant speed, which means it turns on Waning Moon. It gives you counters instantly, and then you can banish a card from your hand and play it on your opponent's turn. So we have 2 copies of yellow Cindering Foresight, and then we have 1 copy of yellow Chain Lightning. This card also, the only reason I'm running 1 copy is because 2 is just a little bit clunky, and there are some really unique and clever combos that you can pull off with Chain Lightning, especially if you still have your boots available. And even if after you break your boots, there are still ways to be able to play a couple spells together, and Chain Lightning can facilitate that. The only reason I don't run a second copy is because I want to keep my yellow count as small as possible. And next we have the reds, and I'm running 18 reds in the main deck. And we're going to start with Aether Flare. Aether Flare is just an amazing card to banish off of Blaze, especially on a combo turn if you're going to break your boots and play something. Like, it has a lot of synergy with Chain Lightning. So let's say you break your boots, you play a Wildfire, and then you banish an Aether Flare off Blaze, and in the middle you play a Chain Lightning, banish the Chain Lightning off of Blaze, and then come in with an Aether Flare. It's going to be a massive amount of damage that is almost impossible for your opponent to block. So Aether Flare is just kind of like Aether Wildfire 2 and 3, or 3 and 4, and it's just like Aether Wildfire Light. Then we have 2 red copies of Cindering Foresight. Just being able to opt 3 on your opponent's turn and boost up your next spell is massive. A lot of times you are drawing up to 2 copies of like Cindering Foresight in hand. So just being able to play that opt, get those counters on the Blaze, and then throw a nice fat juicy spell like Aether Quickening off of just 1 resource, which will come in for like 6 damage. You can play this on your own turn. I have 2 copies of Aether Quickening, and the reason I like Aether Quickening so much is because it just synergizes with Waning Moon perfectly. Meaning that you pitch a blue on your turn, Aether Quickening, and then you have 2 resources left over to follow with Waning Moon, or you do it on your opponent's turn where you banish 4 counters from Blaze, pitch a blue, Aether Quickening, and then come in for 3, so you're coming in for 7 there off of 1 blue. I think it's just really strong. It's really powerful at the end of a Wildfire combo. Only costing 1 and dealing 4 damage is just incredibly powerful, so that's why I've chosen to include 2 copies of Aether Quickening in there. Then we have a lot of the utility we'll get into in a second. We have 2 copies of Red Emeritus Scalding. I think this should come as no surprise to anybody. This is by far and beyond your best second combo spell. So obviously Wildfire is your first best combo spell, which we'll talk about right now. Aether Wildfire, it is still legal in Blitz, and while it is, we are going to take advantage of it. So you all should know what Aether Wildfire does at this point. One of your key goals is to get a Wildfire in the arsenal to build up about 4 counters off of Blaze, banish an Emeriting, and then come in with a Wildfire, pumped up as much as you possibly can with like Cinderings and Kindles and things like that, and then shoot off an Emeritus. And usually, that combo can get up to be 20 to 24 damage pretty easily, and a lot of your opponents should tap out if they're at like full health, but Wildfire can definitely kill them from full health with a Red Emeritus, especially pumped up by some spells like Kindle and Absorbent Aether. So we are running 2 copies of Red Absorbent Aether. So we're not running the yellow absorbs just because running 6 is really clunky, although I would love to. I really wish I could run the yellows in this deck because Absorbent Aether is just such an all-star card. It's not a whiff off the top like it is in Kano, so Blaze can get away with running Absorb that much easier. Parking an Absorb into Arsenal is just super strong if you don't have a Wildfire, and then banishing an Absorb, which will boost your next spell up. Not only does it block 4, it boosts your next spell up by 2. So like Absorb into Wildfire, that's 6. If you happen to have a Kindle or something, that's 7, possibly 8, and then Metacarpus Node can make that 9. And the energy potions help out with smoothing out that cost curve quite a bit. So that's why I've decided to include the energy counters. And Absorb is an all-star. This is just great into just about everything except the Wizard match. I do run the blues in the Wizard match because they are still a blue, and a lot of them are on that hybrid game plan. And if you absolutely know that your opponent is on the hybrid game plan, Absorbent Aether is going to put in so much work for you. They're going to try to do things like Scar for a Scar, and things like E-Strike and stuff like that, and Absorb can just cover up a lot of that damage and let you just like throw a big massive spell at them. And then we have 2 copies of Red Whisper of the Oracles. Just being able to opt 4 and then go again. It's also a 3 block that costs 0. I just don't know why you wouldn't run this card. It's just so strong at getting counters, letting you opt, set up your hand, It has go again, so you can use those counters immediately off of Blaze's hero ability, banish a card, and that can sometimes let you play 2 cards on your own turn. If you banish a Chain Lightning or something like that, sometimes it'll let you play 3 cards if you can afford it. Then we have, as far as the other spells in the deck, in the main deck, we have 2 copies of Red Aether Spindle, just a 2 for 4 that lets you opt X, where X is the damage dealt by Aether Spindle. Obviously, a really, really good card. I don't love that it costs 2, but it's good off a combo. It's good off of just about anything. It's good, if you know that your opponent is on lower Arcane Barrier, just being able to play an Aether Spindle and get some counters on Blaze. And then the last 2 cards we run in the main deck are, of course, 2 copies of Kindle. This card is an all-star. I think Blaze uses Kindle exceptionally well. With all the opting, you can really, really sculpt your hands to the point where you have enough blue count in your hand. You have a follow-up spell. You know what you're going to draw into. You know what you're going to banish with Blaze. You already have your combo set up in Arsenal. And sometimes you get really lucky and can draw into a Kindle and then draw into another Kindle. So play 2 Kindles. It's happened quite a bit. It does come up. It came up last night in my armory, where I was able to play a Cindering Foreskin and then play a Kindle, and then drew into another Kindle, and then drew into a blue, which let me shoot Waning Moon for lethal, and it was just really, really strong. Kindle's an exceptional card. I don't think you should run any less than 2. That's all you can run, but I know a lot of lists out there aren't really sold on Kindle. This list definitely takes advantage of it. So that's the main board. That's the main 40. And then we have the sideboard, and we have a few cards in the sideboard that I want to talk about. We have 2 copies of Snag, and you might be saying wow, that's pretty interesting. It used to be 2 copies of Aetherize, and I still think that you can run Aetherize, Snag, or 2 copies of Scour. Now, Aetherize lets you, if you know your opponent is on something like an Oasis Respite, Aetherize can definitely bail you out of that situation. It's also really good into Enigma, and same with Scour. But I've noticed there's more Assassin and more Ninja in my metagame, in my locals. So I have a lot of Assassin and a lot of Ninja in my locals, so I chose to run Snag. But this could easily be Aetherize or Scour. And I'll let that be up to you. All 3 of these cards have their merit and are very, very good. My old list used to run Aetherize, but since I've been running into a lot of news, a lot of Arachne Solitary Confinement, a lot of Zen, a lot of Katsu. Snag is just definitely really good. Aetherize, also very, very good card. I still love this card, and I still love Scour. Just being a blue block 3 is amazing, and being able to scour away some of those really pesky auras that Enigma and even sometimes Prism can throw up is just really strong. So this is just like a metagame call. This slot is definitely a flex slot. Like I said, you can run even a copy of Snag and a copy of Aetherize, or 2 copies of Snag, 2 copies of Aetherize, or 2 copies of Scour. That's up to you. I just wanted to present that to you and let you know that what I'm running currently is 2 copies of Snag. But Aetherize and Scour could come in, and I'll tell you why they could also come in a second when I show you my last 2 sideboard cards. My last 2 sideboard cards are 2 copies of Battlefront Bastion, just a 7 that prevents the next 1 point of damage that would be dealt to you this turn, and Blanche. Blanche comes in and Battlefront Bastion come in basically for the Prism matchup for both of them. I just wanted to have 7 poppers I wanted to have 4 copies of 7 attack poppers just to get over like Herald of Tenacity or Herald of Triumph or whatever one makes your attack -1. I think it's Triumph, if that is. So these can be very clutch. I would say that OG Prism is still winnable without poppers. So if you have more OG Prism than you do Prism Advent of Thrones, but Prism Advent of Thrones is an almost impossible matchup unless you run some amount of poppers and can prevent them from getting that angel economy. And I found that Battlefront Bastion and Blanche definitely work. Blanche also very good into the Mystic Heroes, just denying them access to colors and access to being able to transcend. But I would say Zen and New are pretty easy matchups without Blanche. So this is also a flex spot. This is just what I have been choosing to run because I do have a lot of the new Mystic Heroes in my locals. A lot of people play Prism around me. So just having 4 copies of 7 attacks just to act as poppers, and Blanche and Battlefront do have some extra utility. So that's why they're in there. Sometimes this isn't a hybrid list by any means. These are sideboard cards, and they mostly only come in for Prism and or some of the Mystic Heroes. But that's my sideboard. That's my main board. I'm going to link this deck list down below. And like I said, the flex slots are 2 Scour and 2 Aetherize. I still really very much love these cards. And who knows, as the metagame might progress, or as some heroes fall in and fall out, Snag might come out, and Battlefront Bastion might come out, and Scour and Aetherize might come in. But as of right now, there aren't any other wizards in the Blitz format. Blaze and, well, I should say Emperor also. Let's not forget about Emperor. But not a lot of people are running running Oasis Respite and things like that. So that's why I found Aetherize just doesn't have as much utility, and it is good against Enigma, I will give you that, and so is Scour. But I think we have a pretty okay time beating Enigma anyways. So these are my flex spots. I felt that I should share those with you. This is my sideboard, this is my main board. If you have any questions, like I said, I will link this deck list below, and the Aetherize and Scour will be in the maybe slot. To anybody that does not have Blaze but really wants them, I'm sorry. It is what it is. You're just gonna have to shell out to like $130 to pick her up right now, but it is worth it. She is one of the funnest Blitz decks that I've played in a long time. I think she is just a little bit more fun than Kano in Blitz because Kano's pretty predictable and Blaze is not. And I don't think that her deck list, I think she's very, very flexible. I think you can build her in quite a few different ways. You can build her as a hybrid deck and not get punished for it. You can build her as a straight arcane deck and not get punished for it. You can build around Kindle and opting and things like that and not get punished for it. I currently think that this version that I'm playing is one of the strongest versions. I've had no problems 4-0ing my armories lately, and like I said, I've got a pretty good Teleshar record. I think this deck is really good into a vast majority of things, and a lot of people are not bringing their Arcane Barrier currently, and they're not bringing in their Oasis currently. But there are a lot of assassins and a lot of ninjas running around in Blitz right now, and that's why I choose to run the cards that I do. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys all so much for being a part of this channel and helping me and just supporting me. Like I said, please show me a like, a comment, a subscribe. Let me know what you think of this deck. Go ahead and take this deck list and run with it. If you have any changes to make to it, just let me know what kind of successes and failures you've been having. But I did up the blue count from my last deck. I did add energy potions. I know I was against it in the Discord, but sometimes it's really crucial to smooth out those hands and just give you the extra resources to be able to pull off some really massive combos. All right, Wizards, peace out and have a great day. Thanks, man.